So, Valve broke Bhop again. What a surprise. CS2 movement has been in a really weird state. There's been an absurd amount of changes, fixes, and breaks to movement, and lots of community workarounds through configs and stuff. And that brings us to October 2025. Desubtic configs have always had the potential to make Bhops achievable in a skillful manner, despite Valve's general unwillingness to polish movement. But anyway, it seems like that time might be coming to an end, and I'll explain why. As someone who has over 1,000 hours of gameplay using config, I can confirm that the current patch as of October 2nd has rendered bhopping with desubtic config completely useless. It just feels the same with and without. I can't speak to others' experiences with jump bug or long jump binds, as I never really cared to risk bending Valve's rules about input automation. I really just wanted to bhop. But it is fairly important to understanding the state of movement and how we got here, so I'll try to start at the beginning for those who maybe haven't been keeping up with CS2 movement, or are just rightfully frustrated with the state of the game. Really, it all started when nullbinds became a feature for gaming peripheral manufacturers. First, it was the Wu-Ting keyboard that had nullbinds, and then Razer followed suit, which really just forced Valve's hand in terms of dealing with input automation. The exec async console command was at the core of the movement community's workaround for CS2's lackluster movement, and for a time gave us functioning configs, but as of recently there's been an uptick in abuse of these non-SVCheats protected command prompts, letting people have perfect recoil and even spinbot through this, technically legitimate command, which obviously is a problem. Eventually, Valve made a new command prompt called SV subtick movement view angles, which essentially fixed the disparity in subtick between shooting and moving, and your mouse movements. Because for a while, the way it used to work is your shooting and moving would send your inputs using subtick, but your mouse movement and your view angles essentially would not be subticked, and that definitely contributed to the game feeling bad in one way or another. It was kind of an invisible problem that was not really confirmed until this was fixed. Valve continued to play with that command and tweak it to the point where they would eventually patch out exec async on cheap protected servers to prevent misuse. Valve's definition of misuse has been a little inconsistent. People actually started receiving back cooldowns for desubticking their mouse movements. Desubticking jump inputs had always been allowed, but apparently fixing the game's movement to this degree was not allowed by Valve. In the patch notes, they claimed that exec async was the cause for one of the main recent problems with movement, which was inputs being dropped by the server, but I assume the read between the lines meaning there is that people who were abusing this command eventually led Valve to decide to cap the inputs. Because there's no real correlation between exec async and inputs being dropped. But for those of us that played day one of the AnimGraph 2 update and experienced what a hard input cap meant, it created a whole host of new problems for bhop that would take months to iron out. One of these problems was mouse lift hopping, which worked because you weren't approaching the input cap anymore since your mouse X and mouse Y values weren't changing. So your bhops just worked 100% of the time if you didn't move your mouse at certain intervals between the hops and picked it up so it wouldn't register inputs. Valve eventually responded to both the input dropping problem and the mouse lift hop problem by making the beta branch of CS2 for bhop testing, which eventually was added into the main CS2 patch and created the frame cap problem. Now, if you don't know, there was a span of about a month in August where if you capped your frame rate at some multiple of 32 or 64, you would hit every hop. People were playing 64 frames, 96 frames, and 128 frames, which all came with respective trade-offs in bhop consistency for extra frames, since that's obviously important in Counter-Strike. But eventually it changed to SV subtick movement view angles, and removing the ability to dynamically cap your frames mid-game ended the month of everyone and their grandmother auto-bhopping around the server without repercussions. Of course, I should also mention the plethora of other bugs that happened over the course of that month that weren't bhop related. There were teleport glitches, there were sky run boosts that would send you up to the skybox, and there were also ones that would go horizontally so you could phase across the map super quickly off a run boost. It made no sense. The aforementioned change to SV subtick movement view angles didn't happen for a long time, but the change to not be able to dynamically cap your frames fixed the auto bhopping. By a long time, I mean a long time. Only a week ago did we get that change to SV subtick movement view angles, which kind of fixed bhop for the span of about a week. But that does bring us up to present day, where there are some new problems. Despite what the day one reactions to this new bhop fix might have suggested, it was not perfect. There was a new auto bhop config running around. Not really sure how it works, so I won't get into the technicalities of it, but it was a new exploit that Valve has to deal with. And for even the bhoppers among us that don't have an intention of auto bhopping or breaking the game in some way, I was playing on a normal desubtick config, no input binds, like no jump bug, no long jump, no anything, just the scroll bind and like the desubtick binds. I had basically auto bhop for a week because of this update. I don't know if people who say that bhop was normal just weren't playing very much or what the deal was. I could like just catch crazy timings basically that you can't do with legitimate bhop. I'm gonna put a clip here of me playing in deathmatch server like right after the update was released where I hit 17 bhops in a row. Sounds legit? It's not. It's auto bhop. The good thing though is that inputs weren't dropping, there were no frame cap bugs, like all of that had been fixed for the most part, but there were just some problems with the state of bhop in this new fix. Now in the month of October, there's been further changes to bhop, and although they are not listed in the patch notes for the Armory update, things are definitely different. Since nothing is public about what is being changed, this part is more observations about current movement for people who aren't in the know, and I'll offer some speculation about what the future of bhop might look like. Like I said in the intro, as of right now, desubtick configs do not work. There's been rumors that Valve is targeting the set info command, which had some application in the new auto bhop config from last week, but in the interim period until they get that fixed, bhop is broken. What's less clear is what the future of desubtick configs will look like, or if indeed they won't come back and we'll get a universal bhop movement fix soon. Valve seems to just be letting the players bug test their own update for them, which is part of the course. They like letting the movement players complain about movement and then fixing things afterwards, so that's what I'm doing here. So what is there to complain about? While I don't think CS2 should have auto bhop, there's definitely a middle ground that needs to be struck for bhop to feel more consistent, because in its current state it's far too inconsistent to be considered skillful in my mind. I did start playing CS2 without config, and the current state of bhops does bear some resemblance to vanilla hops back in the day. It's really important to do very small scrolls and limit the number of inputs you do, otherwise it'll get eaten by the game and you'll just stick to the ground, and it's a whole buzzkill, man. The best chain I've been able to hit without config is 4 bhops in a row, which is nothing to scoff at, right? Your opponent hits 4 bhops on you and flies across your screen. That's still going to catch most people off guard, but for people who might not have any experience playing with config, I can tell you it's really important to manage the consistency of bhops well. There was a moment in time with config where really good players were able to hit maybe even double-digit chains of bhops, and that's quite the competitive advantage over someone who doesn't know movement, or use config for that matter. But it's important for that level of consistency to exist for there to be skill involved in hitting the bhops. When you fail most of your bhop chain starts and you can't get past 4, it makes movement less fun to go for, and it removes all the magic of it that is really special about this game, in my mind. Valve get another chance to answer the question, what role is movement going to play in the competitive game as the franchise continues to grow and we grow into CS2? But I'm hoping that they lead towards a universal movement fix to bring back the prevalence of movement that existed in CSGO and older titles. It's strange because we're in a similar place as we were in CS2 was new and configs didn't exist, so movement was just terrible and not worth going for. I think vanilla bhops have gotten a little bit better in that time, or I'm just better, one or the other. But the consistency still isn't there overall, and I think unless there's a fix to configs or the base game coming, movement is sort of dead for the time being. But I think there's a lot to look forward to. Valve seem to be treating community feedback appropriately, so that's about all I have for you. I've had my own mixed feelings about the state of movement in CS2, especially as far as whether or not movement configs that change the game and give a competitive advantage for those that pass the knowledge check and can download a config should exist. But I figured making a video like this that gives sort of an abridged history up to the present day of CS2's movement problems would be educational for people who don't really follow movement as much, or just can't keep up with everything. I'm generally glad for the continued work Valve does to fix the game. There's lots of valid criticisms of how they've treated Counter-Strike in the community for a while. CS2 does definitely play better than it did on release, and I hope that this novel sense of Counter-Strike devs actually enshrining the fundamentals of movement that made many CS players fall in love with the game continues. Counter-Strike without bhop and movement isn't Counter-Strike, and for a long time people who don't play with config haven't been able to experience what movement should be. I'm sad I can't play with config right now, but if we get another 3-line patch that fixes the game forever, we'll all be better for it. Thanks for watching.